What episode, Riv?
This one's episode 27.
There you go. Good math. Good morning, Mr. Budden. How are you?
Good morning, Mr. Peters. You look like you know how to hold a microphone. I bet you were the lead singer in a teenage band, weren't you?
God, I would have loved. You know what? It's funny you say that. If I could go back in time, I would have probably tried to be in a music group of some sort. Boy band for sure. I think I could have been a decent boy band member. No question.
You know, the funny thing is I was asked that, when you play for your hockey team, I think it was in Montreal at the time, and they ask you these questions like, what's your favorite food? What's your favorite music band? What would you want to do? Would you want to be a rock star? Or would you want to play in the National Hockey League? And come on. 100% I want to be a lead singer of a rock band. No question about it.
I think it was
like
Eddie. Go ahead.
Every other Canadian kid wants to grow up to be a lead singer, right?
Yeah.
This idea that we all want to grow up to be hockey players, right, Craig and Andrew?
No.
Not true.
All you got to do is ask Chad Kroger, what would you rather do, be the lead singer in Nickelback or play in the NHL? And I you know what? I don't think being the lead singer in Nickelback would be all that bad, but I think it was Eddie Van Halen that once said every rock star wants to be a jock and every jock wants to be a rock star. So
There you go.
Exactly.
I guess it kind of fits the form. So is this your favorite time of year right now with the World Juniors expected to start on, or supposedly they were supposed to start on Boxing Day, but is this one of your favorite times of year?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite times of the year because it's a best on best tournament, and you get these fantastic young players that still have a real innocence to them, right? Like they're still junior college, they haven't turned pro, and that's not a negative comment, but like they're playing, and you get these emotional swings up and down, and it's also a fantastic glimpse of what the future of the NHL is going to look like. Just think about last year. So Trevor Zegras is the MVP of the World Junior Tournament.
Yep.
Now this year he's getting he's making all the headlines with his play in the NHL, and Cole Caulfield comes.
Listen, hey, we might want to add in a little Dylan Cousins in that conversation too. He was an all right player that tournament.
Oh no, he was. And how about the goaltender that the Sabres traded for, Devin Levi? Who's tearing it up in the NCAA.
Crazy.
And came into the tournament. So you're right. I mean, think about all that. I mean, Owen Power is going to be front and center this year, and for Buffalo Sabres fans, they know what he's all about, or they think they know what he's all about. But to be able to watch him in a best on best and to see how he controls a game, it's going to be phenomenal.
Have you been able to watch any of Owen Power this year at all? What can you tell us about what he's doing in Michigan right now?
Well, he's one of the best players outside the NHL, period. So let's just talk about that. He and Kent Johnson and Thomas Bordelot and
Beniers.
And Beniers. I mean, it's almost an embarrassment of riches at Michigan, how good they are.
And you have to throw in Hughes, too, the number 5 overall pick.
Oh, yeah, for sure. No, Luke is there. But, I mean, it's such a deep team and it's such a good team. But the best players are the 4 guys I just named. And Luke will find his way, in the years to come. But those guys are so good. And you watch Owen play, and it's almost like I honestly believe, Craig, he could play 60 minutes in the game because he doesn't waste any effort. His brain is processing it at rates and at levels that most players can't even come close to. And he makes it look incredibly easy. And you guys know it's nothing – but there's no easy to play in the game, and certainly as you go up the levels. But oh boy, does Owen Power make it look easy.
What's the latest update on the World Juniors? We don't just want to talk World Juniors, but we know you're very, very big on the prospects, and there's a lot of stuff going around the league and the NHL with Olympics too. But what's the latest on World Juniors? It's not starting Boxing Day, is it?
No, it is. It's still.
Oh, it is still. I thought they were. Yeah. Okay.
Plans are in place. They canceled some of the pre-tourney games. Every team is now going to play on December 23rd and get a game in. And the protocols in place were established long before the new variant came in. And so teams had to test negative before they got on a plane. They were in quarantine coming in. They've tightened their quarantine rules and really they're in a bubble. The players and the teams are now in a bubble. What hasn't been determined yet is what percentage of fans are going to be allowed in the building. It could be 100, it could be 50, I don't know yet. I think that they're still waiting for all the the data and the information that come from the health authorities. But, one of the things is they pulled it off last year with no fans and no cases. And hopefully, when I say no cases, there was some during the tournament, but they isolated them. And hopefully, the tournament can get underway. Hopefully you can get underway with fans, and hopefully there can get to the end of it without any outbreaks.
Who is the team to beat?
I think right now Canada is. It really is a tournament where you can't just say there's one overwhelming favorite. The USA is going to have a good team. Russia's going to have a good team. Don't underestimate the Finns. I've been looking at the Swedes, and the Swedes are not great up the middle of the ice. They have some really good wingers. The defense is good. The goaltender's really good. They're going to have to find a way to, not give up very much and find a way to get on the right side of the score offensively on their power play. But, it seems to me that Sweden now, maybe coming into a tournament where that undefeated record is over. They're not coming into the tournament as a favorite. Might just allow them to just kind of go about their business and play instead of all these expectations and outside pressures on them. And if they're going to get good goaltending. They're going to have good defense. I mean, Simon Edvinsson, who was drafted by Detroit 6 overall, another big 6'6", 6'5" defenseman who skates tremendously well. They're going to get good defense. They're going to get good goaltending. If they can get some offense, they're going to have a chance to make things interesting. But right now, the way Canada is positioned, I see them as having just an edge at the top of the contender group.
So I was looking at stats, and I think one of the things that definitely sparked my interest to talk to you today was Shane Wright. I looked at his stats a while ago. He's picked up from where he was earlier in the season, had a bit of a slow start, but is he putting up the numbers in junior, and is he having the season that everybody expected him to be this generational talent that will, change a team's forecast going forward?
Well, I would say it shouldn't change a team's forecast. I understand that you come in as the prohibitive number one overall pick in the NHL draft, that there's going to be expectations on you. And then you start to look and see, oh, geez, do the stats line up? I've seen Shane play a number of times this year, and both of you know that as you move up the levels, you're going to play with better players, and you're going to play, with a more systematic approach where the better players have a better opportunity. The talent the cream rises to the top. I think that Shane, in his quest to be precise, that's the word I use with him when he plays the game. He's really precise. He knows how to play the game. He knows where to be, but he's playing at a level where a lot of the other players aren't at that level. I think what's happened to him over the course of the last month is he's realized, okay, I got to be a little bit less precise and help my teammates and get the best out of them. And to me, trying to balance that out for a young player in his draft year, still maturing, still understanding, is the work in progress. But I'll be straightforward with both of you guys. I mean, I've seen all the players. I don't see a player better than Shane Wright, and I'm not going to. Well,
you just answered my question, because I was going to say, is there a prospect that you've seen that could maybe push for that number one overall spot, or is it already decided in your opinion?
Well, so let's go back to last year's draft. And we talked about this, and you guys asked me, how good was William Eklund, right? Could William Eklund be the first overall pick? No, he couldn't be. But people start these narratives. To me, what I try to look at is okay, you're going to put William Eklund into the category of Owen Power? Really? Seriously? Okay, I get that William's a good player. He won 7th overall to San Jose. But what Owen Power does in the game, there's very few like him. What William Eklund does, there's a lot more like him. And Shane Wright, and Craig, you played against Patrice Bergeron, and that's who Shane Wright reminds me of.
Well, I was going to ask you that. Shane Wright seems to be a point producer, but not a point producing freak. But he has other intangibles in his game, and I had the honor of coaching Shane Wright in a spring tournament years ago when he was 13 years old at the time, and my brother, who has an 03, was putting like an all-star team together, okay, to go in this spring tournament in Toronto. And my brother had asked me if I wanted to come and help him coach this team because they had a lot of high-end kids, a lot of kids that have already been drafted in the NHL last year. And I said, yeah, I'll come. And so I said, so where are you at? He goes, right now the team's almost full. We're looking for one forward. And I said, any leads? And he's like, no, he's like, I just want to make sure it's the right kid. And I said, okay, well, I've got a kid for you. I said, but he's no 4. He's a year younger. And my brother said, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I'm not taking him. I said, Scott, listen to me. You need to take this kid. He's a special player. We've played. My son, who's an 04, has played against this kid for a long time. So I made the phone call to the parents and this and that. He came to the tournament. Very first game, very first shift on the ice against older players in this super high-end tournament. Very first shift, he goes down and absolutely rips a missile that looked like an NHL shot in stride, bar down. And my brother looked down at me because I was coaching the D, and he looked down at me and said, yeah, he might be okay. And in that tournament, he ended up scoring 8 goals in 6 games, led the team in points, and we ended up winning that tournament. And my brother looked back and he's like, wow, who the hell is this kid? And I said, well, you just continue to watch because you're going to see this kid because he's special. And you look at many years later, he's now the number 1 pick in the he's going to be, I think, the number 1 pick in the National Hockey League.
You should be like all those other agents in Toronto, Riv, going and recruiting 12 and 13-year-old kids. It sounds like you have a good
listen. I mean,
you know exactly what I'm talking about too, Mr. Budden.
Listen, there's another situation of Ivan Miroshenko. So Ivan Miroshenko's agent knows a trainer here in Buffalo that he brings the Russian clients to train over here in Buffalo for weeks at a time. Well, my son was training there that day, and so was this 04 kid, this Ivan Miroshenko. And I can still remember saying to my son, I said, this young man right here is your age, and he is considered the best Russian hockey player. He's like, I told my son, I said, he's the Shane Wright of Russia. So we were watching him, and I remember him going over to the squat rack one day, and he was 14 years old, okay? And there was 2 plates on each side. That's 225 pounds. Now, my son wouldn't be able to do that for 1 back in the day, okay? This kid popped it off the rack and did 10 squats at 225 pounds at 14 years old like it was a warm-up. And I looked at my son and I was like, we got a little work to do here. So very special player, in Ivan Miroshenko. He's another player from Russia that is ranked very highly. What do you think of about him?
Well, I mean, he didn't make the team because from what I understand, he didn't make the team. He's not over. So from my understanding, Craig, is that he had some illness, not COVID related, from what I was told, and that affected his conditioning. He just was a little bit. It wasn't about his skill; it was about his conditioning, and just wasn't up to the speed. And they didn't think they could get him up to speed. You know, we've seen that happen with other players at different times and everything. But he's two things I wanted to say is, number one, I love your term about Shane Wright not being a point scoring freak. He'll produce points, but he's not. And I think that's a great description. Miroshenko, to me, he's a bulldog scorer. He can score in so many different ways. He can score with the shot, but he's going to find a way to drive to the net and drive into that scoring area and put defenders on their heels. And he's got that hunger, he's got that drive, but he's also got the finishing hands to be able to be able to score. And you know, when you have those combination of skills and power and will, you know, you're going to be, and that's why he's been so successful. The only reason he's not on this team this year is because, unfortunately, he ended up with an illness that impacted his conditioning. That's what ultimately ended up happening.
Well, the NHL is having an issue with illness that's impacting their season. What are your thoughts on all this and how it's being handled, and where do we go from here?
I'm going to go back since March 2020. The NHL, I think, has been exemplary in the way they've handled things. They've been open-minded. They've taken advice from the medical table, and I call the medical table all the experts in science, right? Return to play, bubble, postponement of last year's start of the season. We had postponements last year, shutdowns, getting the season done in a different way with the divisions, trying to get a full season in this year. And again, trying to work with the Players Association and the NHL. They're together in this and working through the protocols and making sure that they understand, how do we get a full season in, understand that we may get some bumps on the road. We've seen that. And also, hey, listen, we got to take a step back. The unfortunate part of all this is going to be the NHL players not participating in the Olympics. And, so that now, I think when you ask me how does it play out, that gives the NHL and the players a big window now to manage through this period of time. And I don't know what it's going to look like in a week. I don't know what it's going to look like in 2 weeks. But with February now in play to work around the postponements and see what you can do depending on what the spread ends up being or not being, I think that it can be a real. The negative of not participating in the Olympics will be a positive for what's infected the NHL at this point in time.
Go ahead, River.
I was just going to say, I just wanted to add, your thought and opinion on, Steve Yzerman coming out the other day and just expressing, his opinion on, testing players in the National Hockey League that, are basically not showing symptoms and things like that. What are your thoughts on that moving forward?
Well, number one, Craig, is that we saw the NFL change their testing protocols based on exactly what Steve Yzerman talked about. And so Steve talking about, from his own experiences and seeing what has happened, I mean, that's legitimate and everything. But there's also a bigger issue at play here is like, what does it mean for spread? Like, hopefully we're moving into a phase where, if you do have COVID, the symptoms are mild. Like that would be great news. But the data is still early. And I think that when I go back to the NHL and the NHLPA medical table, they continue to evaluate it. I think what Steve is saying is certainly credible because Steve is credible, but he's not part of the medical table. So we have to just, keep that in mind. But I guess what I would say ultimately is hopefully that's where we're moving towards with the entire pandemic. And we know there's going to be an end to the pandemic. Hopefully that's a positive sign or one of the positive signs to it.
As a former general manager, how are you feeling about your players going to the Olympics? Forget about Beijing, forget about this year with COVID, just in general. With the risk of because they're all star players going over there. You're not sending over fourth and fifth line guys like me. So you're sending over your big ticket players, the guys that are going to help you win.
Game changers in your organization.
Are you in favor? I mean, I don't. Well, were you general managing when? Yeah. So how did you feel about your players going over? Were you kind of like, oh God, I don't want them to get hurt? I mean.
The players wanted to go and participate in a best on best, right? And the Olympics, keep in mind that, we're talking about the early stages of NHL participation in the Olympics. 1998, I was in Dallas. Bob Gainey was an assistant manager of the Canadian entity. 2002, I was with the Flames. So, Jerome McGinley was going over. Interestingly enough, you guys may remember this, but Slovakia had to qualify for the Olympics through a pre-tourney. And I know talking to Peter Stastny, and he'd asked, we had a player on our team by name of Ron Petrovicki. That was Robert's brother. Anyway, Ron, so Peter had phoned me to ask me if I would release Ron to help Slovakia qualify for the Olympics. And I talked to Ron about it, and you look at you're talking to him, and you just see this absolute joy about the opportunity to represent his country and potentially get into the Olympics. Who am I to say no? And so
you're the general manager. You should have said no.
You can say whatever you want.
Well, I didn't feel that way, Craig. Honestly, I really didn't. I felt like this is bigger than just having Ron Petrovicki for a couple. That we were going to miss him for a couple of games. But I told Peter, like, yeah, you can count on him. Like, what ultimately ended up happening is that to be straightforward with you guys is other managers in the league complained about it. So the league wouldn't allow us to let Ron go. So now I got to see the disappointment in Ron's face about not being able to go. So, when I look at it, like, you're always trying to weigh, okay, what you look at it through different lenses, the team's lens, the manager's lens, the player. I tried to incorporate all the different lenses and understand that, like,
the
hey,
ownership.
Oh yeah, well, the ownership too, but, like, at that point in time too, the Olympics are looked at as a launching pad for the growth of the game, right? And it was a different time with the economics and everything. So you're looking at the greater good, so to speak, right? And that's how I looked at it. Listen, there's times when you're going, oh, good, okay, let's just hope Jerome doesn't get hurt. But I saw Jerome get hurt in a fight with Billy Guerin. He broke his thumb on his head. What am I going to do? Tell Jerome not to fight? Like, that's not my decision. Do I want to see him in a fight where he could potentially break his thumb? No, but I'm not going to tell him not to.
I don't know. I might have told him not to fight, but I mean, he was so friggin' tough. He was so tough. I mean, talk about honestly, just such I don't say underappreciated because he's a Hall of Famer, but when people talk about great players in the game, I think Jerome McGinley is too far down on people's lists. When it comes to being an all-around player, character guy.
The ultimate player. Player. You have one of the greatest unsung leaders in the game. The way that he played the game, he was fast. He was physical. He scored how many? Over 600 goals in the National Hockey League. He did everything. He was a power play guy, penalty kill. I mean, he truly should be, I think, a lot higher in the list of greatest players in the game. I believe that.
You're not going to get an argument from me, guys. And I'll tell you, I mean, I think my numbers. There's only 15 players that have scored 600 or more goals in the NHL, and Jerome's one of them. So, like, you just think 500 goals, it's unbelievable. And he could play it any way you wanted, any way the game. And, like, he had that great ability to have his finger on the pulse of the game. Did he need to make a big hit? Did he need to stay away from it? Did he need to drop the mitts and toss a few? Like, he did. You guys know there's some players that never get their pulse on the finger of the game. They just don't understand what type of game they're in.
What were you thinking trading him? No, I'm just joking. You traded him to win a cup. I know.
But we were in Dallas, but we traded him for Joe Nieuwendyk. I was just telling this story about the World Junior, and what the World Junior, when we get a glimpse of the players. He got traded just before the '96 World Junior tournament, and people in Calgary were saying Jerome who. 3 weeks later, they knew Jerome who.
Yeah.
Well,
the funny. I was just going to tell a quick story. I was in Boston at a tournament with my older son at the time, one time, and I remember walking into the arena. And there was a buzz. Like, I've walked into 1,000 youth arenas over the last number of years, but this one, there was a buzz. And I mean a buzz. And I walked in and people were coming up to me like, Jerome McGinley is on the bench right now and ranked number one. And I was just kind of like, yeah, okay, so what? Jerome McGinley. Meanwhile, I'm thinking in my head, holy crap, man, McGinley. So I go over, I watch the game. And I see Jerome come off the bench, and the people see old NHL players, retired NHL players, but when you see someone like that, it's special. He's like a damn unicorn. Okay. And the crazy thing is, I was as giddy as the people standing next to me that were like, I cannot believe that I get to see in person Jerome McGinley. And I'm thinking the same thing. Holy shit, that is Jerome McGinley. Meanwhile, I'm like, why am I thinking like that? Because I played against the guy for my entire career, but it just goes to show the respect that you have for a player that has played that style and been so great for so long and is such an incredible ambassador in person for the game. Even me, who played almost 1,000 games in the league, and looking at Jerome McGinley like, wow.
He drove me nuts at watching his interviews because he was always smiling. You just never seemed like you could piss him off. I mean, he always had this smile, but then
only Vinny Lecavalier when they then you get each other.
Then you get him on the ice and he's literally in kill mode.
I got to tell you a quick story. You guys will appreciate this. I know you will. So Daryl Sutter comes in. I hired Daryl to come to be the coach. And Jerome, he was unbelievable. He had that smile on his face. You know, in warm up, he always signed. The kids were always, you know, we'd come off at the end of warm up, always signing the autographs. The kids were always there. And it bothered Daryl. It was just one of those things that bothered Daryl. And I remember sitting there I said, Daryl, don't worry about him. He's going to be ready to play. He always is ready. So one game, I go down there, and Daryl had instructed the guys to put the visit, like one of the visiting tunnel protectors there that the visiting team usually gets. And I remember sitting there going, uh-oh. I go to our president, Ken King, and I said, I need to talk to you right away. And he goes, oh, okay, this better be important. I said, it's important. Don't worry. I said, your email is going to be filled up with all these complaints because here's what Daryl just did. He goes, you're kidding. I said, no, this is what happened. Well, his email box got filled up real quick. That was the only time Daryl was able to stop that. I mean, because that was Jerome. He was a fierce competitor, but he understood as an ambassador. When you use that word as an ambassador, he was all of that and more. I mean, him and Lanny McDonald are the greatest Calgary Flames in the history of the Calgary Flames organizations, not just for what they did on the ice, but what they meant to the community.
Those tunnels were designed for the visiting teams to not get beer thrown on them and spat on while they walked off of the ice, not to box out your own fans from seeing their stars. Hey, you know, the one question I really want to ask you today, and before we let you go, is what are your thoughts on the game today? You've been around the game for so many years. You built a cup winner. Where is the game now in the eyes of Craig Button?
You know, it's fascinating. You guys, you know, played growing up and everything. And I had this discussion with Dion Phaneuf. Dion Phaneuf was born in 1985, you know, just retired. And he was talking about, you know, defending and how you used to defend and how you used to try to get on the other teams unsettled. And I said, and he was saying, he goes, yeah, I think we got to get back. I said, you were born in 1985, which means you were really formed through the 90s, the way the game was played, into the early 2000s. And now you come into the league in 05 with all that background of what the league was. I said, listen, that's what your experiences were. But here's what I would like you to do. Jerome McGinley's son, Tej, who was just drafted in the Western Hockey League in the first round by Seattle, I said, we were together at a function, and I said, go and ask Tej and explain to him what you just explained to me. And I want to hear what you have, like what he says. He comes back to me a while later. He goes, he had no idea what I was talking about. So, you know, we can talk about, you guys know you played it. You were great competitors and involved in a style of game that's different than today. And the players now are growing up in a different era. And we know how good the skill is. We know how fast they are, you know, but the physical part of the game, you know, I go to games now in junior and you don't see very much physical play. You see physical, like when I talk about body checking and stepping up and everything. And the rules have led to that. The speed has led to that. And when I say the rules, you know, there used to be speed bumps in the game. You know, Craig, you know, you used to be able to go back for a puck and, you know, you had a little bit of protection because somebody could just hold up a guy a little bit. And that's what I call the speed bumps. Those aren't there anymore. Yeah. So now players have to adjust and how the game is played physically. It's more leaning in. We talk about, you know, small area games, using your body, but the physical body checking is something that really we're seeing it slowly go out of the game. And we're not teaching it at a young age either. Kids, you know, body checking isn't part of the game at a young age. And, you know, football, and I know you guys are all part of the Bills Mafia, but the rules changed in the NFL too, but tackling didn't change. And because tackling is a skill that's being taught. We're not teaching body checking, so we shouldn't be surprised that body checking is slowly finding its way out of the game.
I don't want to put you on the spot by answering a question you may not want to answer, but I had this conversation the other day with Craig, and Craig verbally tore me to shreds about it, but which is fine. I'm open to that. I've been called many names for my I've been called a turncoat, I've been called a traitor, but my role in the game and what it was. And I mean, now we don't see the stage fights anymore, but I watched Reeves a week ago or 2 weeks ago now, and Craig, your boy there, McDermott. And I wonder, is this still what we need in hockey to keep the game relevant? And that's the fighting.
I don't know if relevant is the right word.
I don't think it's the right word either. But
anyway, but I know where you're headed here, and here's how I'll answer it. On that 200 by 85 rink, there's no place to hide. In football, you get to run out of bounds. In the hockey rink, there's no place to hide. And you guys know by playing the game who's not, right? And what's, in my view, this is my view, is that too many of the players that aren't real, and there's not a lot of them, but too many of the players that aren't real have been allowed to play in a manner that shouldn't be allowed. And that's where I struggle with it, right? Because as players on the ice, and that's why I say, I would never tell Jerome, don't fight. I would never say, I remember when the instigator rule came in, and I was the same way, Bob Gainey was the same way. If you feel you got to go address something, we'll kill the instigator penalty. I said the same thing when I was in Calgary with our players. You have to make those decisions. Part of the challenge is it's not so much about the stage fights. It's about saying, don't do that. We hear all the time, Joe McGinley could take care of himself, but a player that can just say, don't do that again. Brian McGrattan, there's a great story that Craig Conroy tells. Brian McGrattan, he said a bunch of the Vancouver Canucks were going after Jerome, and they're on the road in Vancouver. And Brian turned around. He was right in front of the Vancouver bench on a face-off, and he turned around to Daniel and Henrik Sedin, and he said, "Hey, you two, I don't know who's who, but I'm going to tell you guys right now. Tell anybody on your team." He's looking right them in the eye. He goes, "Tell anybody on your team that if they want to go and take runs at Jerome, I'm coming after one of you two guys. Daniel, Henrik, Daniel, whoever you are, I can't tell you apart, but that's how we're playing the game from here on in." That's something that establishes, what it is. It's a deterrent, because now players have to make up their mind. Is this how I want to proceed? And I think that's what you're talking about, Andrew. And, I think that's something that, still has a place in the game, because that 200 by 85, it is a cage match. And I'm not trying to use that as an extreme. There's no place to run out of bounds.
Craig, your face is like all red because you're smiling the whole time.
No, I'm not a advocate for fighting. I'm an advocate for exciting hockey that can be physical, that's skilled, that's fast. And stage fighting is the worst thing that's ever happened to hockey. And now it's gone. And we need to keep it gone. But I'll tell you right now, we had two of the toughest guys in the National Hockey League, in McDermott and Ryan Reeves, go toe-to-toe in a spirited fight. And I'm going to tell you right now, they scrolled from those two guys and scrolled to the benches and scrolled to the fans. And let me tell you something right now. There was not one single player sitting on the bench. Every single one of them were standing up. They had smiles on their faces. They were giving their teammate the let's go. And then they scrolled to the fans, and the fans were like, ah. It's a part of the game that makes this game exciting. It makes it a little edgy. It makes it, it brings the energy to it. And I think that's important, and you want to keep that. Our players have gotten bigger, faster, stronger, more skilled. They're more creative. They're more dynamic, and we want that because that's awesome. But the other part of the game is a really big part of the game also, and that's the intensity, that's the grind, that's the I'm going to, help my brother, my teammate out at all costs. And I think that's a big part of the game too. And I think we're losing that a little bit piece by piece.
Yeah, no, and I agree with you, Craig. The stage fights, like that. I mean, that was it was what it was. But like the other parts of it, again, Bob Gainey, I'll never forget him saying this. He goes, you know what? And I mean, he played a Hall of Famer. He said, because it's not up to me to decide if we need tough guys, enforcers, whatever term you want to use for them. If the players feel more comfortable playing in that type of an environment, we better get them. Because it's not up to me to say what you should be comfortable or not comfortable. And let's not forget, and I'll finish with this: the Detroit Red Wings, as they move, from into their championship years, they still had Joey Kocher, they had Darren McCarty, and they had Chris Draper and Kirk Maltby and players, Marty LaPointe, that played hard, right?
Yep.
But they did reach a point where they said, our players are comfortable now just playing. But there's a development phase to that too. And you can never underscore the importance of the players that can give you that comfort level. And people that don't, what drives me crazy is people that are on the outside of the game. And that's not a criticism, that want to dictate, you shouldn't have that. Yeah, do you understand what it's like to go into a building where the opposing team is going to grind you and it's going to be hard and physical?
Yeah.
I would say most of them don't.
Give us your World Junior Champion prediction, and then give us if we can, we'll finish the NHL season. We know they're going to find a way to get it done.
Yeah.
Give us your Stanley Cup champion.
Okay, World Junior, I think it's going to be reverse of last year. USA, Canada in the gold medal final, and Canada's going to find a way to win it on home ice. My Stanley Cup champion today is the Tampa Bay Lightning. I can't bet against them, and I know they're getting Kucherov back. I just
3 in a row, eh?
Yeah, I can't bet against them. And you know what I think benefits them too? They've had these little bit of rest periods, over the last 2 seasons, right? Like, their first cup and then the longer time. I think that benefits them a little bit for going for 3. But I can't bet against them.
I was happy they won last year because I think a lot of people, myself included, maybe I didn't at the time credit them with the proper credit that it deserved for winning that bubble Stanley Cup, and how hard that must have been for the players. I couldn't imagine. I would have been going nuts in that bubble. So I guess maybe that was ignorant on my side, but I was really happy for them to be able to win it last year in front of fans, because they got to experience that, right? I mean, 3 in a row. Come on, I'm not into that. Let's. I like to change the record. I like to change the record around a little bit.
Okay, so now I'm gonna finish this. Here's one question you can both answer, and you got to answer me in 2. I'm gonna give you a 2-part question.
Okay.
Who wins on December 26th, Bills or Pats at New England? And who wins the Super Bowl?
Well, I'll be literally killed when I walk out of my front door if I say the Patriots. So I mean, look, I'm going to tell you, I only watch Bills games. So I live in Orchard Park. I don't watch many other NFL games. So I really want for Buffalo. I've lived here for 20 years now, and I'm going to tell you, I would love nothing more than to see what this city does, or Western New York and Bills Mafia across the world does, with a parade after the Bills win the Super Bowl. I need to witness it, because I think it would be one of the greatest spectacles in sports. So I want the Bills to win that game, and I want the Bills to win the Super Bowl, because I think too, Josh Allen is just the classiest guy you might ever come across in pro sports.
Couldn't have a better player playing for a city. That's for sure. I'm going to tell you this: the Pats in the last game, they played in that insane windy conditions. It was freezing cold.
I took the over that game. How about that, Mr. Button? I took the over in that game.
3
dumbest bet ever.
3 times threw the ball, won the game. It's going to be very different in the next one. I think that Josh Allen is going to show his true colors. I think this team in Buffalo, the defense and the offense, are going to pull together, and they're going to have a big victory in New England. As far as Stanley Cup champ, I'm going to go with Carolina, and I don't know why, because I couldn't name you more than like 8 guys on the whole entire team, but every year they just seem to be there. And sometimes when you go into the playoffs and you lose, you learn a little bit more from yourselves and what it takes to be a true champion. And I think that team's damn close. I think Rhonda Brendamore is one of the greatest coaches in the National Hockey League. And I think that they are going to make some changes going up to the trade deadline this year. And I think that's going to be a very, very difficult team to play.
Yeah. Two things I'll finish with before I wish you Merry Christmas is I love Rod Brindamore. I love his attitude. I love his approach to coaching that team. He has been phenomenal for that group of players. And I love Josh Allen. Now, don't hold this against me, and I know you won't, but I'm a Pats fan. But, Mac Jones, as good as he's played this year, Josh Allen is special. Josh Allen he's such a great competitor, even in that wind blown. I mean, he's trying to throw that ball and trying to make plays and everything. And I think the Patriots said, we're going to keep running it, take time off the clock. Because the more opportunities Josh Allen has to do his thing, running, passing, everything that goes with his game, the more dangerous and the more opportunity the Buffalo Bills have. I think that game helped them. I think coming back, I got to tell you, I see them as one of the Super Bowl favorites too. And listen, I'm a Pats fan, but I got lots of respect for the Bills.
We had Ryan Leaf. We interviewed Ryan Leaf a couple weeks ago, and we asked him this question because it was the Monday night game, that exact same game. We asked him what was going to happen, and he just said Bill Belichick, basically, you're not necessarily playing against the Patriots. It's can you beat Bill Belichick and what he puts in place. And so, I mean, I guess it will all come down to that because apparently everyone seems to think that he's God.
He's damn close right now.
Yeah, football God, right? Football God.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks so much for your time today.
My pleasure to join you guys. Yeah, my pleasure to join you guys. Happy holidays to you and your family and your loved ones and your friends. And always a pleasure whenever I can join you. It's always a yes, Andrew. It's always a yes.
I appreciate that. And I tell you, there are still some nights I put my head down on my pillow and I think about that 4-hour psychological evaluation you put me through with the before the draft with our testing with Dallas. Do you remember we sat with
Dr. Scott McFadden.
I was, you know what? It was one of the greatest experiences I've ever had in hockey was in that, I don't know if you call it a psychological evaluation, but it was like, we sat with the doctor and talked and, it was, I don't think enough teams were doing that. That was the only time I'd ever experienced that. And I wonder if teams are doing it now.
Yeah, well, I think people are trying to find every aspect of a player on and off the ice that can, help them. I hope you remember this too. We sent you a full copy. This wasn't something where we kept the copy.
Oh no, I do.
We sent you the copy of the report because the idea, Craig, if you're not familiar with it, was we wanted to know the player and the player needed to know because we spent time with the players that we really, really felt that we had a chance at getting and we wanted that we really valued in terms of what we thought our team needed in the draft. But we also gave a full report to players we drafted and players we didn't draft to the players so that they could see what it wasn't just one of these come in. What did that all mean? It was something we get. And I think I was just, the feedback I've gotten from the players over the years was that, they really appreciated getting that feedback. And I think that that's something that makes me feel really proud.
Well, I tell you this too, last thing I'll say, and I know I've mentioned this to you before when we were doing our live show, but the letter that you wrote me afterward, I'll never forget it. It's the fact that you didn't draft me was probably, I mean, that pick was coming, and then you traded it. And I'm like, oh my God, out in the interview. But no, the letter you wrote me, it was, I know that it meant a lot to my mom and dad because they've never received a report like that or a nice little like that. So no, it was great. And I've always appreciated that we've kept in touch over the years and always enjoy your coverage and with the hockey and everything. So appreciate your time and happy holidays to you and your family.
Yep. Happy holidays, Craig. Thank you.
Yeah, same. Yeah. Take care, you guys.
That's a wrap on another episode of After the Whistle. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter, After the Whistle, and at Craig Rivet 52, at the Instigator 76. And you can find us, as you already know, on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube, and anywhere else where you can get your podcasts. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to spread the word.